Hello everybody, Tuki here, reporting live for SportsGamer.gg from our new home office on the East Coast of the United States, also known as my parents' guest room while I am visiting them for the week. That said, hey, the action never stops here with Sports Gamer. The hype level doesn't drop. We are just a few moments away now at the time that you're watching this from the start of our spring season here with ECL 22. After a phenomenal winter season, of course, just feels like it ended and we're already back at it thanks to the new format. But with the phenomenal winter season in the books, it's time to find out whether or not there will indeed be a grand final this June. Again, a reminder of the new format. The winner of the winter season takes on the winner of the spring season in that grand final. However, if the same team wins, there is no grand final. We have a grand champion crowned, and H-Reds certainly have a tremendous chance to do just that. They became the first team in our winter season to win back-to-back titles, a feat that somehow was not accomplished by some of the incredible teams that we've seen be declared champions in the past. Not only have H-Reds become that first team to go back-to-back, they have the tremendous opportunity to be the first team to win 3 in a row. It's certainly catching me off guard, catching us all off guard, that it's become such a dominant story for them. Today, though, before we get into the action on the broadcast, we're going to go through and kind of give you guys a preview of what this spring season is shaping up to be. Of course, one Nikkei, the face of the season here, rightfully so. We'll talk about him and Sawa Esports a little bit later on. This time out, what we did not do was go through with the captain's poll. Didn't have time to conduct that, but what we are going to do is go in reverse order of how the standings went last season and talk about these teams. So no real prediction on where they're going to be and where they're going to finish. I will shout out Eki's Twitter. He had a post up kind of talking about his predictions. A lot of people responded to that as well, in case you want to get kind of a general thought on where a lot of these players think teams will finish this year. The first team that we're going to talk about here, because a lot has changed within the elite division, we are going to talk about the new boys in Stargazing. Last season, they lost in the pro semis to Reality Check in 7, but they did still earn a spot in a relegation battle because of that, and they took advantage of it. They swept longtime elite club Northern Ascendancy in that series. Stargazing take their spot. And unfortunately, as we've seen so many times now, Northern Ascendancy is no more. But we look at this Stargazing roster, the projected lineup. You have Flapperi, or Flappery perhaps, going to be one of my favorite names to say this season. A rookie, but has ECL experience dating back all the way to season 5. 47 points in 30 regular season games last year with this club. The center, I believe, is Ose. And again, this is the opportunity for these guys to be like, actually, it's Ose. We'll get there. But you have Ose, again, another rookie of the year. 3rd season in the ECL, went from core to pro and now up to elite with this very club. 38 points in 30 games last year. And then it is Koloslav on that right-hand side, also a rookie. Combined 76 points in 49 Pro Division games last season between the regular season and the playoffs. The defense, as you would expect, Jemechkin is there. Rookie of the year, ECL experience, again, dating back to season 5, much like we saw with Flapperi, and of course 30 points in 30 games last year, so capable of putting up points from the blue line. And we'll go with Nick as well, another rookie, also the 3rd ECL season, from core to pro to elite, 38 points in 30 games last year. And we see the return of Pirza. 24 appearances with IQ back in ECL. 12 had a 12-8-4 record with a 77.4% save percentage. So, what is the outlook for this team here in a general sense? Well, it's very tough for essentially an all-rookie, it is an all-rookie skater lineup at the very least to succeed and stay up in the elite division. It has been done before and could be done again, but at the same time, you know, it's going to have to be, I think, if you look at the base numbers, it's going to have to be a very defensively solid, side that we see from these guys here, because the offensive totals in pro weren't exactly setting the world on fire either for the most part. So going to be very intrigued to see what Stargazing have to offer this season. It could be tough for them, though, because as we'll talk about with a bunch of these other clubs, a lot's changed, and there is very, very tough competition. Which brings us to the other new team in this division, the returning Jyväskylä. They are back after winning the Pro Division playoffs last season, beating Reality Check in 6 games. Key transfers for them, well, they do end up losing Pawanso. So their roster looks like this. Pawanso going back to Havu. Of course, we'll talk about Havu Gaming a little bit later on. But all in all, you look at this lineup here, and there's a name that stands out, and it is Pawanso's replacement, and we'll start off talking about him. It is Aro on that left wing side, a Rookie of the Year candidate. Certainly spent ECL 12 and Winter 22 with Phila Academy in light division, had 91 points in 28 games last season. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. You, of course, have Antti making his comeback to the Elite Division. He's a Season 1 OG. He's been here for a very, very long time. Last played, of course, in ECL 12 with Yip. Had 65 points in 30 games last year. And the captain, Indy, will also be up for Comeback Player of the Year this year. Another guy who's been around since Season 1. Last played with Jyväskylä in Elite, or ECL Elite Division Season 12. 57 points in 30 games. The defense, again, 2 more comeback players that we didn't see in the Elite Division last year. You have Sile on that left-hand side. He's been around since Season 2. Last played in the ECL in Season 12. 42 points in 30 games last year in the Pro Division. And Sakam as well. Again, that Elite experience. Last played in ECL 12. He was with YMCA Esports, though. Had 24 points in 26 games last year. And then the defense, or with the defense in order, then the goaltending, it is Kazu. Also, again, last seen in the Elite Division in ECL 12 with Rusty Blades. And what a record it was. But a 777 save percentage. So, interesting times with this team. I think a lot of high expectations because of this Elite experience. But Aro's the X factor. I've been able to confirm that there was interest from numerous clubs to acquire his services. He lands with the Jyväskylä. That is a huge deal for them upon their return to the Elite Division. So yeah, the bar is high. Playoffs certainly aren't out of the question, but I think their expectations are perhaps even higher. A lot of pressure on this team, I would say, to deliver. And they might just be able to do so with how many other teams are kind of going through a bit of turmoil right now. So very, very intrigued to see what they do. And then technically, we have another club, another new club. But are they really new? The Falun Coal Miners are back for the first time since ECL 7. And needless to say, the league has changed a lot since then. You look at this projected lineup, and of course, right now it's interesting with the 4 goalies that they have there to kind of have the roster work out. But the projected lineup on the left-hand side, looking like it's going to be Martindale. Had 28 points in 30 games with Northern Ascendancy last year. Sada Poika, his teammate, joins him as well, 44 points in those 30 games last year. And then Fopa Tolflin comes over from Färjestad, 38 points last season. So elite experience, at the ready when it comes to these 3. And the defensive side, it is the same thing. You have the captain in Furion, 25 points in 30 games with Granite last year. And Tansky as well, also coming over from Northern Ascendancy, had 16 points last year. And then in goal, it's going to be between Police Control and Last Mandalorian. Police Control we last saw in ECL 8, Season 8, and Last Mandalorian in ECL 7. It's expected to be a bit of a tandem there and maybe ride with the hot hand, which will be interesting. I mean, they also have Roy Stone Thunberg on the roster who aren't expected to see too much action this season. But the question is, where is the ceiling for this group? Who knows? I mean, again, there's undeniable talent there. There's plenty of experience within the Elite Division, but it's just a matter of whether or not they're able to develop this chemistry. And I think you could see from that thread with Eki, it's rather up and down based off of how people think this might go for them this season. But certainly interesting to watch. And one of the biggest stories has to be the fact that, last year, Granite Gaming, the big story, of course, the form of Vesa Pampa. They're able to bring in Furion Laymanens and Antonio Mannin from Färjestad. They, eliminate the 2 seed in Sawa Gaming in the playoffs last year in the first round, and now they're done. and they all pretty much go their separate ways. We'll be talking about the members of that Granite Gaming lineup throughout this kind of coverage of these teams, because again, they split up, and it's interesting. From my understanding, of course, just not feeling like the chemistry was there, which is very surprising to hear a team that made the Final Four say that. But, we'll see who it ended up being kind of the right call for. And a team like the Coal Miners, I don't want to rule them out. I don't want to rule them out. They have way too much experience to immediately be ruled out. So excited to see what they are going to do this year. And then it brings us to kind of the reverse order that we have. So we'll start off with Conquer Gaming. They finished in 15th last year. They survived a relegation series against Reality Check in 5 games. Reality Check, almost unfortunate to have not made it to the Elite Division. In terms of transfers out, they lose defenseman Yukis, who has gone to Hana HC in our Pro Division, and they bring in the rookie Katanarski, who comes from Boomers, also in the Pro Division. That projected lineup looking like Yarax on the left wing side, 31 points in 20 games last year. Vera, the captain, 30 in 30. And then our Jinu is in the lineup, up for Comeback Player of the Year. Last played in ECL 12 with Kova, had 4 goals in 2 games. And again, was expected to see some playing time last year, from my understanding, at least from my recollection. And ultimately, that didn't come to fruition. But very intrigued to see what's going to happen with him moving back into a full-time spot. A very experienced player within the ECL. And then again, we mentioned him. Katanarski comes over from Boomers. He'll be in the Rookie of the Year conversation. 22 points in 28 games. And Yalkin, expected to be on that right defensive side, had 10 points in 30 games last year. We might see Freilander a little bit this season. Time will tell with that. And of course, Monkeyhead, back between the pipes, went 7, 17, and 6 last year, but with an 80.26 save percentage. So again, being above that 80 is where you want to be. I don't think you can blame the goaltending at all for Conquer's struggles last year. Monkeyhead might be the primary reason why they're still in the Elite Division, but it is expected that they'll be fighting for survival again. It is up to these new additions to kind of push the club out of those relegation spots. They were just 2 wins back of 12th, which of course is a safety spot. But saying just 2 wins back is unfair with how tough this league is. So it's expected to be another kind of tough go for Conquer Gaming. But they've been very, very good at fighting for their survival. Very, very good at sticking around. I wouldn't quite rule them out just yet, but as always, top 8's where you want to be. 9, 10, 11, 12 is safe. 13 through 15, you got to fight for your survival. 16th automatically relegated, of course. That is why we see Zurich Hockey back in our Pro Division this season. HV71 last year came up with Zurich from the Pro Division. They finished 14th. Transfers out, well, they lose both of their defenders. Putaking goes to Arogla, as does Zupe. They both depart for that core division team. But the transfers in, they bring in Kauto from Luleo in our Pro Division. And then, I mean, you want to talk about a conversation that we might be having throughout the season for who is the transfer of the year. Antonio Mannon joins from Granite Gaming. He is projected to be on their left wing side, had 42 points in 30 games last year. You have the captain in Demski, 34 points last year, and Matalaiska with 38. We talked about Kauto. He comes over from Luleo, point per game pace last year as a defenseman, I do believe. So again, great work there from him. And he will be alongside, at least it's projected to be Rubitus, of course, formerly of Färjestad. Had 36 points in 30 games last year as a forward. So intrigued to see what he does there. Kofalainen will be their man between the pipes. Went 9, 15, and 6 last year with a 76% save percentage. And one of those stat lines that you look at and say, he's better than those numbers, at least from the performances that Sin and I got to cover of HV71 last year. So they have a promising rookie defenseman, but all eyes are on Antonio Mannon. He is viewed by some as the best Swedish winger that is out there. So this is a huge pickup for a team that, again, finished in a relegation spot last year. And the goal has to be, securing their spot in the Elite Division for our winter season in ECL 23. But perhaps they aim even higher than that. They're one of the more interesting teams to watch this season because of the outright X factor that is Antonio Mannon. So keep an eye out on HV71 this year. Finishing in 12th last year, YMCA Esports. No transfers in or out for this team. It's an interesting way to go about things. Of course, left wing projected to be JM, 30 points in 29 games last year. Angel Kuru, the centerman, 30 in 30. And Sokolo, 22 in 30. So again, not the highest point totals in the world from the forwards, but on defense is where we're going to see a change. Rimpe projected to be out, and Zhuge is going to step into this lineup. Rimpe had 14 points in 30 games last year, and Zhuge is really stepping out of a depth role for the first time since ECL 7. It's been a long time since he's been a regular in a lineup. He will be alongside Julius, who had 13 points in a full season last year. The key here, once again, has to be Bennu. 10, 16, and 4 last year, but an 81% save percentage. He is still one of the better goalies in the elite division. Just needs the team in front of him to kind of get the job done and get that offense a little bit more. So intrigued to see what YMCA can do. Again, they finished in that last safety spot. They want to push for the playoffs one more time, and we'll see if they can do it. I mean, again, last season was pretty disappointing for them by really kind of all metrics. Orbro Hockey. They finished in 11th last year, coincidentally 11th right now on the list as you get a look at their roster. And again, another team with, minor changes, I would say. On that left wing side, you have Jansku, 42 points in 30 games last year. But then the big change is Pakari stepping in, comeback player of the year candidate, last played in Elite in ECL 10 with YMCA Esports. Last season had 59 points in 30 games for Dynastia in our pro division. You have Yakari as well, projected. He's not currently listed there, but is projected to still be their right wing for this season, at least at the time of recording this. 33 points in 28 games played. The defense expected to be, again, as well, someone who is not currently on their roster page, but expected to be there, is Migo Buna, 17 points in 30 games last year. And Terity, of course, as you see there, 22 points in 30. The goaltender, Eli Kamel, went 9, 14, and 7 last year, 76% save percentage. Needless to say, that needs to improve greatly. So I think they're still potentially stuck in that rut of being on the outside looking in. They are perhaps the definition of who knows this season. Could it be a playoff push? Could they again find themselves in the safety of the middle ground? Do they fall back towards a relegation battle? Who knows? It all looks possible for Orbro this season, which could be concerning, but could also make them rather dangerous. So we'll see what happens for them this year. And then we get to our Swiss contingent, the ZSC Esports team, the Zurich Lions. A transfer here on the forward side of things. Berkedal leaves for the Vecchio Lakers in our pro division, but it is we're going to go with Koismish. It's Kermit. Everyone calls him Kermit. Just change your name to Kermit, man. Make it easy for all of us. But he joins in from No Rex Gaming. Left wing side, expected, of course, to be Alex. Mr. I dangled you out. Had 33 points in 28 games last year. Also ended up playing goalie and doing very well for 2 games. That was a weird situation. Captain, of course, and Sentiment Original Snus, 36 points in 30 games. And then again, we mentioned Kermit. His rookie season in the Elite Division had 60 points in 30 games with no Rex in pro last year. The defense stays the same. Tony had 21 points and Haldim with 17. Chich in goal, still expected to be the guy, although Fightlocka has been brought in as the backup. But Chich went 8, 9, and 3 with a 79% save percentage. So the question is, will that kind of be the front three to finally stick? I think it's a solid lineup and a playoff hopeful, but this needs to kind of be a finalized version because we've seen examples of people kind of getting into the lineup. It's like, oh, okay, maybe we won't use Berkedal so much. Okay, we brought back I dangled you out. Freeman's in and out of the lineup. I'm looking forward to seeing if this is finally kind of that core unit that they stick with for a good amount of time. So we'll see what happens with ZSC this season. But again, I do think they could and likely will be very much in that playoff conversation. I think we're beyond the talk of them, once upon a time being projected to be in one of those bottom 3 spots. I think they've earned that level of respect now. Roots Gaming is next. They finished 9th last season and keep this lineup exactly the same. Limu on that left wing side, 38 points last year. Captain Alexa with 43, and Sampi also point per game at 30 and 30. The defense, Nordsman, 21 points last year, 17 for Voti. And then it's the goaltending that might be the X factor here. Yantes went 9, 11, and 6 with a 78.9% save percentage. Mehis getting 4 games, going 1, 1, and 2 with a 77% save percentage. So, we'll see kind of what happens in goal there with the perhaps tandem idea. And, the same lineup, same goal of making the playoffs, and team balance, as we've learned, is incredibly important. That is often why you'll see players move on or teams kind of dissolve. So maybe it's not that surprising to not see any changes, and maybe, just maybe, it'll be a benefit to Roots Gaming to, have that chemistry, to have not made any changes, and hopefully be an even better version of themselves heading into next season. Still very much in that mix of could be a playoff team, and could be as far back as 13th just because of the extreme level of competition that we have in the division this year. And that brings us to talking about the teams that were in the playoffs last season. And we will start off with Goons, who finished in 8th. They lost in round 1 to H-Reds. No transfers out, but they do bring in Sapreeks in goal from, again, Northern Ascendancy, RIP. Projected lineup, Piku Roger expected to be on that left wing side. Former Rookie of the Year, had 53 points last year in a full season. Leitonen down the middle, 42 points last year. And Kriketsi, the captain, had 46 points last season. Jay Toro, again, what a pickup he was last year, but it didn't really translate to success. He had 18 points in 30 games, but we've seen much higher output from him in the past. And then right now, as it stands, that right D spot is unconfirmed. We have penciled in Ilmari, who would be technically a comeback player of the year candidate after sitting out last season, but that is completely unconfirmed. Viba is likely out, again, from what I have been told, meaning either we will see Ilmari return, we could see the transfer of a defender. There are a couple of people out in the transfer portal there, or a forward transfer that could see Kriketsi drop back to defense. We really don't know at the time of recording, and again, the conversations that I've had, we don't really know what they're going to be doing on the defensive side of things. And then in goal, you have Sapreeks, who went 9, 15, and 6 with an 80.89 save percentage last year. And Finn Kona, who was the goalie for Goons, went 17, 9, and 4, also had an 80% save percentage. So goaltending isn't expected to be a problem. But the uncertainty surrounding this lineup this close to the start of a season is extremely concerning. The aura of Goons being a potential challenger in the Elite Division is starting to fade a little bit after a disappointing season in our winter campaign. It seems like it's a boom or bust season for them. Either they will get back on the right track and really start to make the push that people expected them to make, almost as if Sawa usurped their spot. Or maybe, just maybe, again, the pieces start to fall a little bit. I'm very intrigued for Goons. I think this is a huge, huge season for them. And again, such a young, talented player, but there's no denying the lack of availability for Viba this year. That leaves a huge hole on the defensive side of things for Goons. And then. You think I'm going to jump cut it, but no. Because the next name we have to talk about, the team that finished in 6th last year and then lost in round 1 to Frölunda in the most competitive sweep you'll ever see. Havu Gaming. Where do we even start with Havu at this point? I suppose we should start with the transfers. And maybe the biggest story that I've ever seen here in my time over the past 3 years now with the ECL. Captain Flyer Kungen is gone. He has departed for Frölunda. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. They, of course, do bring back Pawanso. Their projected lineup, Pawanso on that left wing side. Comeback player of the year status for him. Last played with Havu in ECL 12. Had 57 points that year, so no denying he is a phenomenal elite level talent. Had 67 points in 30 games last season in pro with Jypi Vaskala when they won the title. So huge, huge gain for them. Then it's Dominointi, the new captain. 58 points last year, one of the premier centers in this league. And this is where it gets interesting from here on out. Right wing at the moment is projected to be Villikun. Yeah, Wiegelson. As far as I'm aware of, it's more potentially of a style thing than availability. And again, if I'm wrong on that, apologies. But Villikun is slotting in with more of his puck possession first style, which certainly does fit what Havu likes to do offensively. He had 23 points last season as a defender. That is a massive change. And then, of course, you still have Nasa Stelia on the left D side, 31 points last year, a great offensive defenseman. So who's the right defender going to be? That's going to be Sibelius, one of the better goaltenders in the elite division. Went 10-5-1 last year with a 79% save percentage. He is projected to be playing as a skater in the ECL for the first time since ECL 6. And then in goal is Hans Salino, who went 10-2-2 with an 82% save percentage last year. They are throwing anything and everything at the wall to see what sticks after the departure of their captain. And Havu find themselves closer to the playoff bubble spots than they've perhaps ever been, rather than in direct championship conversation. This is, it's tough to say it's the most important season, but after the last couple of seasons of disappointment, not being able to get back to the final thanks to the emergence of H-Reds. And, you're talking about H-Reds and Frölunda being in the last 3 finals now. It's caused this shakeup with Havu where we don't really know where they stand at this point. We don't really know what this lineup's going to do. And, a couple of years ago, we saw the massive shakeup of Hans Salino going to that left wing side. And now you're talking about, again, Sibelius playing defense, Villikun moving up to forward. I mean, we've seen defenders jump up to forward and have a ton of success. Antonio Mannon's maybe the best example of that over the past few years. I don't know, and I don't know if anybody knows, just what is in store for Havu Gaming this year, but it is one of the biggest stories to keep an eye on is what is the future of this club if this season goes south, because again, you lose Flyer Kungen, you make all these changes. If it still doesn't work, then what? At the same time, it could work out perfectly. We shall see. Keep an eye on Havu this season. And then we get to the top 5. Don't know if the webcam froze there. If it didn't, you don't know what I'm talking about. Good. Beautiful. And then we get to the team that finished in 5th last season. Shockingly, according to some, of course, that is IQ. Now, they did lose to Färjestad in round 1. They are another team that has made no changes. So left wing side looking to be Niepi, had 41 points last season. Ikavalko, the center, had 46 points. Great year for him. And on the right, Jurgeli with 35. The defense, Nico with 16 points. Pottsberg with 11. And then Teme, 21-8-1 record with an outstanding 83% save percentage. I think he would have gotten more love had it not been for the season that Nike had between the pipes. So, another team where it's okay, it's the same squad, and that's not a bad thing. We've talked about it already, and we still have 4 teams to go. The amount of turnover from the other clubs around them, the chemistry that they have could be that much more of a positive. The playoffs are definitely the goal again this season. Getting out of the first round is probably really the goal. But as always, good teams will miss, and maybe IQ does take a step back. That's what I'm so excited for this season. There are so many teams that have the playoffs in their sights. You could argue every team does, but at the end of the day, only 8 teams can make it. So excited to see what IQ does in this season as well, now that the expectations are, well, let's be honest, really higher than they've ever been for IQ in the elite division. Oh, and then these guys. Talk about high expectations. Färjestad, who finished in 4th in the regular season last year, lost to Frölunda in round 2. Transfers out, they lose Foppa Toflin, again to the Falun squad there, and Mr. Nipsely also leaves. Of course, he joined up with this team last minute as the original incarnation of Sawa Esports dissolved. He goes back to the Pro Division with Arctic, a great pickup for them, by the way. In terms of transfers in, well, we talked about Granite falling apart, and look who's back. Laminens rejoins the team after a season away, and he brings Ekin with him. But let's talk about this as we've been doing. Left wing first. There isn't too much more I can say about Afe. 50 points in 30 games last year. For those of you not familiar with him, the most apt comparison is probably Alex Ovechkin. Not for the fact that he has a wicked one-timer, but he has the go-to move. You know it's coming, yet sometimes, if not most of the time, you still can't stop him. Again, he goes with a much speedier build, always looking for those counterattacks, and it works out tremendously time after time. Mullen, the center, 43 points last year, one of the best defensive centermen in the elite division. But then the pickup of Ekin. And talk about this as maybe being a transfer of the season contender. He had 50 points in 30 games with Granite last year and was their heart and soul in the playoffs. This is a gigantic pickup. No disrespects to the likes of Fopa Toflin and Antonio Mannin, who have played on that right wing spot in the past 2 years. But Ekin brings something totally different than those two, and it might just be what FBK needs to take that next big step forward. And then the defense, of course, Sebi Larson returns, 29 points in 30 games last year. And we talked about Laminen's 24 points last year with Granite, of course, was on FBK in ECL 12. So he has the familiarity with a lot of these teammates. And of course, it's McSaven between the pipes. 19-6-1 last year with an 80.57 save percentage. Again, on his day, one of the best goalies in the world. It's just a matter of, in a sense, perhaps that consistency, but not just from him, but from the team in general. And you could argue this version of the team on paper might be as strong as FBK's ever been. I mean, it's tough to say. That ECL 12 team was damn good too. FBK, Färjestad, continuing to keep their name in the conversation of, maybe, just maybe, top four, certainly the goal. Maybe they do it. And, you have those two big losses, but you get these two phenomenal pickups. We weren't sure what to expect. I mean, how do you have high expectations after losing the Laminens and Antonio Mannin and Furion? And again, they still finished fourth, but now those expectations are higher than they've ever been. So looking forward to seeing what we see out of FBK. And that brings us to the final three. And the team I think I've been waiting to talk about the most since we started this deal here, and that is Frölunda. In terms of transfers out, they lose defenseman Teemu to Sawa. But again, the big news, they bring in Flyer Kuhnken. I am still in awe of this. Of course, left wing side is Playmaker, 53 points in 30 games last year. Still one of the most prolific scorers that we've seen, and hopefully, fully motivated for this season, because again, in terms of winning a championship, they need Playmaker to be on top of his game. You have Eki moving over to center, had 62 points last season. And honestly, center might fit his style a little bit more. We saw at the beginning of the winter season, he was really a very strong net front presence with a lot of deflections before I think EA kind of patched things to make deflections a little bit less of a reliable option. But in terms of play style, I think having Eki in front of goal is huge. And then on the right is Flyer Kuhnken, of course, 51 points in 30 games with Havu last year, and just the presence that he brings on that right-hand side. I just can't help but think, you have the idea of Flyer Kuhnken just torpedoing into the corners to win these pucks, and then having Playmaker to work with and Eki in front of goal. It's a scary, scary thought for any and all opposition that they'll come up against this year. And the X factor, of course, has to be Potzloff, moving back to defense at 45 points last year at center, but he moves back to D. He'll be with Loimu, also over a point per game pace as a defender. And then it's Kape between the pipes. Went 21-5-2 last season. Only a 78% save percentage. Really turned it on in the playoffs, though, en route to that finals loss against H-Reds. There's probably no better way to state your intentions other than by signing the captain from your greatest rival. Again, it was unthinkable. It was unthinkable. And Sin and I have mentioned it on broadcast so many times. When we first got here, it was Fila and Havu, and nothing's changing until those two teams break apart. H-Reds had different plans. and H-Reds have essentially facilitated the major changes between their two biggest rivals, where essentially by bringing in Flyer Kungen, you're almost having to unite the two teams of Frölunda and Havu to try and take down this seemingly unstoppable force in H-Reds. Insanity. Absolute insanity. Will it be enough to get the job done? That is the question. Will the chemistry be there? I cannot wait to see this team in action this year. And then, before talking about the defending champions, we get to talk about Sawa Esports. They finished in second last season, but they lost to Granite Gaming in round 1 in 6 games. The momentum just didn't really keep up. In terms of transfers out, Wenger is gone on defense, but they bring in Teemu from Frölunda. Starting off, of course, with this lineup, though, Jurska is there. Last season's Rookie of the Year had 63 points in 30 games. Mojo with 50 points and Vatu with 59. That offense was phenomenal. On defense, Tombu, the captain, had 23 points, and Teemu with 26 for Frölunda. And then the goalie of the year last year, Nike, is here, the face of the spring season, 23-4-1 with an .898 save percentage. Insanity. Couldn't really keep it up in the playoffs, couldn't consistently hit that mark, but Sawa in general kind of got caught in the playoffs. And I think the addition of Teemu makes it pretty clear. This is a team that's not only looking to prove that last season wasn't a fluke, but that they are the ones to step up and topple H-Reds, not Frölunda, with that pickup of Flyer Kungen, and they might just have the roster to do it. I'm very, very intrigued to see what we see from Sawa this season. At the same time, we've seen teams rise like this, Yippee Vaskala, and then they start to fall back down. We'll see what happens, but Sawa on paper still as strong, if not stronger, than they've ever been. Which segues perfectly to the final team that we get to talk about here today, our two-time defending champions in H-Reds. No lineup changes, still the same team that beat Frölunda back-to-back in finals. And what can you say? You have Villapoika, last season's forward of the year, 96 points in 44 games, all competitions, regular season and playoffs. Insanity. The captain, Benito, 87 points in those 44 games. Nicky Dangles had 90 in those 44 games. Domi with 50 as a defender. King of Apes with 46. And then there's FaZe, former Rookie of the Year, former Goalie of the Year, MVP of the playoffs. He went 25-2-4 in the regular season last year with an .832 save percentage. He went 12-1-1 in the playoffs with an .813. Again, they were the first team to repeat, and they might just be the first team to three-peat. We have seen it around. Shout out to my boy Deke Slayer. Didn't mean to fully close that tab, but screw it. Shout out to Deke Slayer. Why not? We have seen H-Red's emergence. We have seen teams now trying to counteract that. Will it work out? Who knows? Certainly hope that it does. It wouldn't be a video of mine without something like that happening. But shout out to Deke Slayer. Shout out to sportsgamer.gg. Shout out to you guys for checking out this preview as well. Very intrigued to know what everyone thinks. Again, I say it every single year, but that's because the bar keeps getting raised. So excited to see what happens this season, shaping up to potentially be our best and most competitive. I kind of view it essentially as mimicking the world of, say, a Formula One. Just constantly you have a team that's dominant. Now that they've been toppled, essentially H-Reds are the Red Bull of this world. Now that H-Reds have gotten to the top, you see these other teams having to scramble to make these changes and get to the top of the mountain. Very excited to see how this happens. Again, sportsgamer.gg for all the information that you need for this upcoming season. And we will get to the action here on this broadcast very, very soon.